Hey everyone, welcome back to Unorthodox Cricket. And how exciting were last night's games? Two absolute thrillers. Firstly with India and Afghanistan, and then it was followed up by New Zealand and West Indies. Both games came down to the last over, with Afghanistan nearly upsetting India and West Indies also nearly doing the same to New Zealand. Now what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to take a look at those games and just see how they played out. So starting with the India and Afghanistan game, India won the toss and elected to bat on what looked like a really flat wicket. They didn't start too well, with Rohit falling to Majib to an absolute seed. Rohit, as you can see there, just playing for a bit of spin and having his off-pole knocked back. Now Rahul looked really good early on, and then I thought he threw his wicket away a little bit, as you can see there, playing a reverse sweep. I don't think that was probably the situation to be playing it, but however, that's the decision he made. And then Virat Kohli came to the crease, and with absolute control as always, he brought up another half century, as you can see there. By the end of the tournament, he's definitely going to be in the top run scorers. There's no question about that. Just a classy player. And it was actually quite a surprise when he got out in the fashion that he does. As you can see there, he cut one straight to backward point. Maybe the ball got a little bit more bounce on him and just failed to control it. Now India's basically struggled the whole innings. They never really got going. They didn't have the quick fire start at the top, which they usually have through Rohit. But then Kohli obviously turned it round. And then Jadhav made a patient 50 in the end. But there was no real closing power there. So as we sort of take a look at the scorecard, as you can see there, Rahul got a start and then threw it away a bit, as did Vijay Shankar and also MS Dhoni. So it was saved by a classy innings from Kohli, as you can see there, top scoring, and a gritty innings from Jadhav. Now just looking at the bowling card, finally the Afghan spinners came to the party. Majib picked up 1 for 26 off his 10, continuing to impress, and such a young age of 18. Then the experienced head of Mohammad Nabi picked up 2 for 33 off 9, and finally Rashid Khan, after his nightmare the other night, came back with 1 for 38 off his 10. So at the end of that innings, I'd say Afghanistan would have been reasonably happy with the total they were chasing. And then, yeah, things sort of started going downhill from there. So after that great start from the Afghanistan bowlers, the batsmen would have wanted to back themselves to chase that total of 225. But as you can see here, they had a horrible start, with Zazai having an absolutely awful hoik across the line and getting cleaned up early. He's really had an unfortunate tournament. I thought he might have been one of those sort of guys who stepped up and starred, but it hasn't been the case. He's sort of been figured out pretty quickly, and really hasn't been able to dominate the attacks as I thought he might have been able to. Now watching this live, Afghanistan were absolutely cruising at 106 for 2, and then Jasprit Bumrah does what he does. As you can see here, bouncing out Rahmat, and then later that same over, he also removed Hashmatullah, and that really killed Afghanistan in that moment, just as they were making a real push. Now Afghanistan still weren't out of it. They sort of chipped away and they actually got it down to 31 off 22, and then Mohammad Nabi came in and really had a crack at the Indians. Now watching that live, it was absolutely thrilling. 16 off the last with Mohammad Nabi and Mohammad Shami bowling to him. Could have gone either way, and the way that Nabi was striking the ball, it wouldn't have surprised me if Afghanistan caused the upset. Then the first ball of the over gets pumped down the ground by Nabi, beats long on and goes for the fence and leaves them 12 off 5. You really think this could be the day that Afghanistan really step up and cause their upset. Now unfortunately, 2 balls later, you can see Nabi holes out to that same place, putting it down long on's throat, and that was sort of the end of Afghanistan. They still had a bit of hope, but you sort of felt that might have been the game going there. And then absolute class from Mohammad Shami, did exactly what he needed to do, bowled full and straight at the tail, cleaned up the first one, and then he's got the hat-trick ball. What does he do? He comes in and does the exact same thing, full, straight, cleans it up, and seals an absolutely thrilling win for India. Absolute heartbreak for Afghanistan, but what a game, and that really just kicked off the night. But as we take a look at the scorecard, as you can sort of see, not a lot else besides Mohammad Nabi there with 52, a couple of supporting roles, but guys just really didn't kick on. And with the ball, as you can see, Mohammad Shami, absolutely fantastic with all the pressure on him. He comes in, cleans up with a hat-trick and seals the deal. Jasprit Bumrah, as always, absolute class, 2 for 39 off his 10. and then Chahal 2 for 36 off his 10. So just a great game, some great individual performances there, and what a way to start off the night. Now, after that absolute thriller between Afghanistan and India, I don't think the night could get too much better, but then came the New Zealand-West Indies game. Now, the pitch looked pretty flat, so I wasn't too worried about New Zealand having to have a wee bat on that first, until big Sheldon Cottrell ran in, and as you can see, massive in-swinger, nice infall to Guptill, wrapped him on the pads, originally given not out, but as it was reviewed, you could see that it was cleaning up the sticks, and Guptill was on his way. Now, Kane Williamson came out to the crease and got a nice full toss outside off, pumped it through the covers, and they ended up running four due to a bit of magic in the outfield from Carlos Braithwaite there. And it was a pretty eventful over, 10 runs off it, and then as you can see, Cullen Munro getting cleaned up first nut as well, both openers back in the hut for Golden Ducks. Not ideal. Colin Munro, he's promised so much in the New Zealand domestic scene, but he's never really converted to international. He spoke of so highly in the New Zealand circle, he just hasn't been able to convert, and it's so frustrating. I can't imagine how frustrating it is for him. Then after that pretty eventful first over, New Zealand sort of started to rebuild through Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor, as they've done so many times. I think they've now got the New Zealand record for most 50 plus partnerships, 27 in total. And they're just so reliable. You just know that one of them's going to put a score on the board. And there you can see Kane Williamson bringing up yet another half century. Such a classy player, and he's also going to be right up there in the top run scorers by the end of this competition. Then not long after Williamson brought up his 50, Roscoe also brought up his half century, another classy knock. Maybe not as fluent as usual, but he got the job done. And then to break the partnership, it had to be Chris Gale, didn't it? With all his flair, running in with his hat and his shades on, and Roscoe just chipped one to mid-off, and that was the end of him. Another great celebration from Gale there, nearly thrown his shoulder out, celebrating, but always doing it with a smile on his face. Then steady as she goes, Williamson brought up another century, back-to-back for him now in the World Cup, looking so good. Maybe not striking with the same power that some of the other players are in the tournament, but he's Mr. Reliable. He's always going to be there, and he's always going to put a score on the board for you. Then once Williamson had brought up his ton, he really started to free up the shoulders. Played some great shots, so strong in that cut shot. You really just can't be feeding it to him there. He'll punish you all day. You can't bowl short and wide outside off stump to Kane Williamson, because he's just going to punish you all day, as he has done throughout the tournament. Eventually it was undone trying to hoik one over the leg side, and that was the end of him for an amazing 148, which really held New Zealand's innings together. As we take a look at the scorecard, as you can see, both openers back in the hut for Golden Ducks. That's pretty rare, but then as most people would predict, Kane Williamson there with 148 and Ross Taylor with 69 held New Zealand together. There were a few cameos in there. Neesham chipped in, so did de Grandhomme, and then Santner at the end sort of brought the total to 291 for the 8 after the 50 overs. Sheldon Cottrell, so impressive, 4 for 56, just brings so much energy, and he's a real star for the future. Camille Roach was tied off his 10, he was none for 38, and then Chris Gale picked up the big wicket of Ross Taylor, which really probably contained New Zealand to the 290 as opposed to a 350 if that partnership wasn't broken. Now, 291 was always going to be an interesting chase with the West Indies lineup. You never really know who's going to show up and what they're going to do, but there's so much power and they can take it away from you in an instant. Now, it was a great start from the Kiwis. Shy Hope was removed by Trent Bolt, dragged it back onto his sticks. And then Chris Gale really began to find his feet. Had a couple of sixes, but he was really helped out by the New Zealand fielders throughout his whole innings. Dropped a few times, as you can see, Bolt clanging that one. That's not the first time he's done it this tournament. Usually a safe pair of hands, but Bolty put that one down. And then Gale just continued on until he picked up his 50, hitting the ball so cleanly. And then Matt Henry gave him another chance, and it almost looked like New Zealand were really throwing the game away there, and they were going to let Gale seal the deal. And then the case of the dropsies continued for New Zealand. Munro made an absolute shambles of another one in the deep. And then there was a huge wicket, but then the turning point for New Zealand, a bit of a partnership between Gale and Hetmeyer. Then Lockie Ferguson comes in, slow ball and cleans up Hetmeyer, which really sort of changed the flow of the game. Now the game was still really in the balance there, and then Lockie Ferguson comes in the very next ball and nicks off the captain Jason Holder. Scale was still chipping away until Colin de Grandhomme came in with his floaters, and then finally Trent Boult held a catch, and I thought that was the game. I thought New Zealand would have it sealed up from there, but little did I know what Carlos Braithwaite had planned. Braithwaite just came in, he hit the ball so cleanly and he had great support from the tail. Sheldon Cottrell holding his own there. And then they needed 53 off 45 balls. There were a few edges in there, a couple of boundaries, and it sort of looked like West Indies were going to take things home. And then Braithwaite brought up such an impressive 100. They needed 6 off 8 and it almost felt like destiny that they'd get over the line. And then unfortunately, absolutely heartbreaking, gets caught on the boundary by a great catch from Trent Boult, and as you can see, it absolutely destroyed him. Such a great innings to come so close and then fall so short. I can't imagine what that feels like, but it's amazing to see that the New Zealand players, Ross Taylor there, really just saying well done mate, and what more can you do? But what a great game of cricket. Absolutely heartbreaking for the West Indies and Braithwaite. But it was just an absolutely phenomenal game. Now taking a look at the scorecard, as you can sort of see, top of the order, Chris Gale, who's given a few lives, but he managed to kick on to 87. That partnership with him and Hetmeyer really threatened to take the game away. And then Ferguson came in, broke up that partnership, and it looked like it was back in New Zealand's favour until Braithwaite played an absolutely stunning innings of 101, only to be caught short there at the end. Taking a look at the bowling figures, Trent Boult, as always, 4 for 30 off his 10, just an absolutely world-class performer. And then Lockie Ferguson made that double breakthrough, which really sort of turned the game right around. Now, as a massive cricket fan, those two games was something to watch. Just really blows you away, and hopefully the Cricket World Cup can continue to be so competitive, and hopefully that rain holds off. Now, obviously this is still my second video, guys. I'm still getting used to things. Any feedback is greatly appreciated. Let me know in the comments what you guys sort of thought of those games, and moving forward, any improvements I can sort of make with the channel. But thanks again for watching, and enjoy tonight's game.